Thank you so much for joining us on this call.
Thank you.
Mr. Tata needs no introduction. We've had the pleasure, of course, and privilege of having Mr. Tata on our global advisory board, where immense learning, immense guidance has happened over the last 4 years. And I'd like to thank you again, Mr. Tata, for that. As you're aware, this is a very different time from perhaps what anybody or yourself have seen in the earlier days.
None of us have been able to compare this with any calamity that we've had before. We've always been able to relate ourselves to a geographic area where we can escape the particular circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time in my experience that we have a situation where there is no place to go, there's no place to sit free of this area, there's no place to consider an escape. Everywhere we go, everywhere we look, whatever decision we take has an impact not only on one part of the world, but everybody. So it's a totally different experience, and one which is difficult to relate to in terms of what should we do, where should we go. It seems like there's an undercurrent of getting rid of the problem, the virus, before we can say what the new normal is going to be. We don't know when that's going to take place, whether it is going to take place in the first place, or it'll be stretched out to next year, if then. So there's a bit of tentativeness in this, and I seek your indulgence in talking to you on this, because I think it's wrong to say that this will happen by this period of time. We hope it will.
Sure.
But it may not. And if it may not, maybe the route to go is another route. And with due respect, you and I and others sitting at home are not seeing the darkest part of the scenario that we're talking. We're not seeing the hunger. We're not seeing the despair. We're not seeing the separation of families. We're not seeing keeping distance, which is not difficult for us, but around us, we have abject poverty. We have great concentration of people in close proximity. And then we're asking, what will the world look like? And so repeatedly, I think we'll, in this conversation, have an issue, certainly from my side, of saying, I don't know.
No, absolutely. And you're absolutely right that, some of us are obviously privileged, and there is a lot of hardship at the workers, the migration laborers, and a lot of people who need to even earn a daily living. Absolutely, I agree with you. We are also finding that entrepreneurs have this very exciting attitude that we will overcome. That's at a mindset level. You're familiar with CureFit, yourself an investor. They've started live classes at home, live consultations at home, one-to-one trainings, all digital in nature, and that's actually growing very well. And we see that in companies. Again, we are familiar with obviously some of our portfolio companies. So, Chiratae has found this in Healthify Me, where live classes are going on at home. Doctor consultations have started at home by many companies in the country overall. Um, uh, we have a very interesting company called Cropin, which is enabling through artificial intelligence and satellite visualization quality of crops. And that kind of company is actually improving their sales. And a company like Unifor, which is BPO sector, where travel is under stress, but BPO calls are rising. So technology enabling digitization of call centers is becoming a big draw right now. So I can take many examples here overall. This is the time where entrepreneurs could look at new business models, new products, new services, new revenue models, which perhaps were not being looked at earlier.
Yeah.
And what's the mindset of the entrepreneur which you think you would advise him to be in today? Because there's obviously a lot of hardship and then cash considerations. So, with what mindset does the entrepreneur go into the market today?
I think that there could be uh, multiple views on this. One could do it because the entrepreneur is enterprising, unwilling to sit and moan about uh, the, the change situation and the need to undo what he has done. That's one type. The other type is where it's not looked at as a problem. It's looked at as you said, as an opportunity, and the excitement of finding a new way to do things. I know when I was a younger person in the organization, one of the most exciting times that I have had is where you can sit down with a bunch of your colleagues and brainstorm.
Mm-hmm.
And what did that brainstorm do? It enabled you to look for a different way to do things to beat your competition or to reduce your costs or to change the way in which you operated. And you can't do this as easily in a smokestack industry, but in the enterprises that we're talking to at the present moment, this could be an invigorator, if you might. I would like to say that this is where those bright uh, answers come, where nobody says that's a stupid thought.
Thought. Okay.
Everything has a value, and so the most innovative people are those that who say, let's get a clean sheet of paper and look at another way to do things. And if we're seeing that happen, it could bring about a new wave. It stops us from being traditional. It forces us to be innovative. And that would be the biggest opportunity we have. The next is,
Hmm.
can we be innovative first? Can we do it better than our peers in other parts of the world? That would come later. But just what you said, digitizing healthcare and moving into the home, uh, doctor, doctor's intervention, digitize at the home, because you can see, you can talk, you can feel, you can the only thing you can't do is tactilely examine uh, something in your hand.
No,
But we're already traversed away from the tradition, as we've spoken in the last few minutes.
Yeah. And Mr. Tata, this is about businesses. This is about entrepreneurs. Do you think entrepreneurs will come with live consulting at home, very, phenomenal apps, easy to use? And what's your view on consumer behavior? Do you think this scenario which we are in as an economy is also forcing changes in consumer behavior?
Yeah, I think consumer behavior is a little based on little different uh, metrics. It's a willingness to be exposed to the excitement of doing things a different way. It it deals exactly with the innovativeness of the entrepreneur in making this the packaging that he's offering to the customer. If it excites the customer, if it's packaged nicely, well thought through,
Hmm.
I think the consumer will welcome it. He will not resist it. And I think the transformation we saw from the offline to the online
Online, yeah.
uh, has been an indication of a large consumer base willing to look at a new way to buy, a new way to sell, a new way to a new experience in terms of dealing with uh, mercantile issues. And I think we're looking at that likely to happen or continue to happen in the future.
No, well said. And again, I think the other sort of follow-up query which I had was people used to travel to go to a doctor or to go to a gym or buy grocery and or even in a B2B business. Now, if live elements come in, digital elements come in, uh, the whole issue of payment, would they be willing to pay more, or would they be willing to pay the same, or would they be willing to pay less? Any thoughts on that?
I think there's an element of the marketplace that would be willing to pay more because more is being done to the product and to the customer. And he looks at that as a convenience to him. He's willing to pay for that. And there's another segment of the customer is, who is doing this because he expects to see it being more economic for him.
Hmm.
And you put those two things together, and the consumer has defined what in his mind is an acceptable cost. The entrepreneur has put more into that package than the customer had earlier been able to access. And there's a happy marriage there. It's only a new entrepreneur who comes in and perhaps tries to dislodge the the initial player in the field.
The field.